All right, welcome to the Stronger Together podcast with me, Kenny.
And me, Jen.
We today, first of all, hopefully we sound a lot better. If you've listened to this before, we've got microphones, we've got headphones, we've got a fancy mixer thingy that I
don't really understand how to use.
But we're going legit with this, so hopefully it's more enjoyable. But what we want to talk about today, since this will be coming out right around the beginning of November, that we want to talk about the holidays and what the next 9 weeks should look like, and how we approach it, how we have approached it, how we recommend clients approach it, and we just want to help you not, take away 10% of the year and throw that to the wayside and feel like you have to start all over come January, because that's not super productive. So yeah, let's talk about how it used to look for us, because it wasn't awesome.
No. And a little bit of context. My birthday is December 21st. So we have a lot of celebrating that happens in the month of December. And I remember I used to say I would literally take the entire month of December off, eat whatever I wanted, use it as an excuse, rarely would work out. And I was like, well, I just take 1 month a year off and this is just what I do, right? And I would end up waking up on January 1st and I would feel so awful. I always remember New Year's like barely being able to zip my pants up. Like whenever we were going to like a holiday thing on New Year's Eve, I would like dread that, like, oh, I have to put hard pants on and I know I'm not going to be able to zip them up.
Hard pants. I've never heard that term before.
Yeah, like jeans, things that actually have zippers instead of spandex.
Yeah, got it.
And it's not that I think the thing that resonates for me about how I would handle that is that it was such an all or nothing approach, and like that type of thinking would follow me into any other stressful season in life. So yeah, we're talking about the holidays right now. We're going to talk about that today, but it's more about how you manage your goals and your health against seasons that feel more out of control than others, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then just like help with the mindset and help with, I think, a window into what that looks like for us, because we are professionals in the industry, and we do hold ourselves to a pretty high standard. But I think that most people have this impression that we're perfect. Unless you know us really well, then that's not how we are. But in any case, yeah, in any case, the people I think that would look at us and say, well, you guys probably have dry turkey and no dessert on Thanksgiving and, work out on like your normal routine. And that's not the case. So I think the point is that conveying the reality for people who do hold this to a high standard of their lives and letting people know that it's not about perfection, but it's about enjoyment, but also not throwing it all to the side, and just kind of talking through that stuff. So
yeah, I actually remember last year around Thanksgiving, one of our coaches was in the gym and he's a good friend of ours as well. So he comes to Thanksgiving every year with us, and he was telling a client like, oh, I'm going to Jen and Kenny's for Thanksgiving. And they were like, oh, like, I bet Jen cooks so healthy. Like you don't even need to like worry about Thanksgiving because Jen's probably making a super healthy thing. And our coach Kirk said, you do not know Jen if you don't know that like there's going to be a lot of butter and cream on the table at Thanksgiving, and it's absolutely true. But it's what we do outside of those days. Like I think that's really a great place to start, is like what we do outside of those holidays that let us go into that event, eat whatever the heck we want, have 3 pieces of pie if we really want to on Thanksgiving, but not have it permeate the other like 8 weeks of that time period.
Yeah, I think it's about shorter windows of all or nothing in a way, rather than 9 weeks of all or nothing. Most people mean nothing. And again, for us, a lot of that was nothing. But having those days, like saying, okay, well, Thanksgiving and usually the day after is kind of free for all. And so, yeah, we have multiple desserts. We have lots of butter and lots of our stuff to make it flavorful and delicious. And then usually the day after with leftovers and perhaps hangovers and the realities of that, we typically will enjoy another day and let it be and just not worry about it and not feel stressed or guilty or disappointed or shame or any of those things. We let that go. But then immediately afterwards, it's like, okay, all this stuff's gone. Like we got to get rid of it, and we're back to relatively normal, back to workouts, back to eating clean, and making the cycle shorter rather than, well, I did this poorly from on Thursday, Friday. I might as well just wait till January, which again, I think is pretty normal.
I think the root, and after working with so many clients from a nutrition standpoint over the years, like the root of all those beliefs, or more importantly, like that cycle of like, well, I was already bad in quotation marks, because I don't believe you're like, food doesn't have morality, right? Food is just food. But that belief that they like already failed, or they didn't do things, perfectly. So why not just wait until January 1st? Like that all comes from like a guilt or a belief around the fact that like it has to be perfect to count, And so I think the biggest thing we can start to like shift as we go into the holidays this year, as you go into a stressful season, is the fact that like that's absolutely not true. It doesn't have to be perfect to count, and any step towards your health is better than no step at all, right? And one of the things I talk to nutrition clients about all the time is like, listen, every time you eat, that's an opportunity to make a healthy choice, right? So Monday isn't spectacular. January 1st isn't something to like, it's not magical, right? Magical is the word I was looking for. If you have a delightful Thanksgiving and eat all the stuff, guess what? Like Friday morning, you can have your normal breakfast and like move on. Like you don't have to wait to start.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And same with the gym and fitness routines, is that you're probably going to be out of that. It's easy during a lot of seasons. It's very easy to do a high frequency of training. There's just not a lot of things getting in the way. So there's not holidays, there's not travel, there's not guests, and that's easy. It really is. But then once you get into a tough season, I think that people figure they miss a Monday or they miss a Friday or they miss a day, and then it's all for naught. And that's I think mentally a big hurdle to get over, where it is that like, okay, well, I'll just wait till next week, or I'll wait till this time to get back on. But like you have an opportunity, just like you said with nutrition, to get back in the gym on that Friday, even if you weren't there Monday through Thursday, and get a deposit for your long-term well-being and just making that a good day.
Use the word deposit, and it really got me thinking about this analogy that I use all the time with clients about, and I think you do use the same thing, about how are you treating your health, right? Like, are you treating it like a credit card, or are you treating it like a bank account, right? And when we treat our health like our credit card, especially during the holidays, that's like the old way we used to do it, right? Of like, I'll start again on January, I'll put everything on credit, I'll pay it off later. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. Which is okay for a little bit of time, but that really adds up, and that health debt starts to kind of spiral. When we start to look at our health as a savings or like a checking account, right? We're like, every decision can be a deposit into that checking account. And so you start to see like, well, maybe I did have like a glass of wine and 2 pieces of pizza last night at dinner. Great. That was a withdrawal. This morning I can wake up and like have a great breakfast, go get a workout in. Those are deposits. And when we look at it this way, also all of a sudden becomes, I just want to have more deposits than I do withdrawals, right? I want to have a positive balance in that account. When you start to see your health that way, you do get into that like little, like, okay, this is an opportunity to make a deposit versus like, I'm just going to keep charging it, put it on the Amex, and like, hope I can pay it off later.
Yeah. And I think that is my favorite way to analogize this as well, is like for the long term too, is we're getting into the beginning of November, and you have an opportunity to build up your savings in a way of having the routine now, like building up 4 weeks of positive deposits and growing that, knowing that you can live off of that for the weeks that are less routine oriented. And so people talk a lot about, they feel like they're out of the gym for 2 weeks and they're going to lose it all, or 8 weeks, or however long it is. They're like, oh man, I've lost everything. And the fact of the matter is, it's just not true. Mm-hmm. And it's really easy to get back in a routine, and really easy to get back to where you were if you've got a massive savings account built, or even some savings account built up. It's just, you have put yourself in a spot to be able to make withdrawals from that and not set yourself way back. And again, on the longer, so that I like to think about these things in cycles, and I like to think about things in the really long term. And one of the biggest things I talk about is building up a massive retirement account for your fitness. And in the long term, is that the more fitness you go into your later years of 70s, 80s, and 90s with, the more you're going to be able to live off that and function very well rather than trying to catch up at the very, at the last minute. While you can still make progress, it's just if you go into it with a lot of account built up, you're going to be in better shape. And so same with these seasons of life where there is opportunities to be less routine, November, December, in summer, and then whatever your travel plans are, birthdays or anything like that, the more you can be routine oriented and build up that savings when the opportunity is there, the more withdrawals you can make without having massive steps backwards. Still knowing that, in this shorter term cycle of this, it's not about just living off your savings from November to December, but still continuing to try and make little deposits along the way and not feeling bad about the withdrawals that you do make.
Yeah, 100%. And then so because that's kind of the ethereal piece of it, right? Of this is the mindset you would go in with. This is why it matters. What is that? Let's talk through what that actually looks like. Okay, I'm going to paint a scenario. You tell me what you would do here. You're somebody who's goes to the gym 4 days a week, eats pretty clean. The holidays roll around. You've got more social gatherings, right? You've got more obligations. There's more opportunity, or maybe you're traveling. How do you adjust your expectation while still having consistency in that scenario?
I think that having a mindset of 30 minutes of workout is really a pretty positive step forward. And that is a very loose definition and very easily achievable. And so if you are traveling or you're not able to make it to the gym, or you're not, whatever the situation is, you're not able to do your 6 a.m. class on that day, rather than saying, well, I'm not going to do anything, you can go for a walk. Going for a walk, we do that on the day after Thanksgiving every time, or every year. And for me, we have a Peloton in the garage, and while it's not necessarily my favorite form of exercise, that is an easy box to check, and I cannot imagine a scenario in which I can't find 30 minutes to go hop on that thing and bang it out.
And I think that is speaking to just adjusting the expectation down. It's not your only two options aren't work out at the gym or do nothing, right? There's always an in between there, and finding, just committing to a time frame and doing whatever you can do in that time frame. And listen, everybody has 30 minutes. That's totally possible.
Yeah, open up your screen time and tell me what that's for the day.
That is one of the first things I have clients do. If they can't find time, I'm tell me how long you are on Instagram today. Okay, perfect. I just found you 30 minutes. I think the other thing, from a mindset perspective too, is realizing that, especially if you're with family, a lot of times people say, my family's not super active or nobody works out or whatever. But I have found, and I think we have found over and over again, when we take a step to vote for our health and we take a step to do an activity in that situation, it inspires other people to do the same thing. So a lot of times we're afraid people are going to think I'm the weirdo because I'm going to work out, right? But the truth is, a lot of times when we set that standard for ourselves, we get other people in our family to join us and make a healthy choice too. So we're being different, but being different actually helps other people too.
Yeah, totally. And I think, again, there's a balance with the whole, I have a lot of issues with the grind mentality that's kind of popularized in Instagram, social media, whatever.
100%.
And I think that is the image that dissuades people from doing. It's the one or the other. You got to go run a marathon on Thanksgiving so you can have your turkey and dessert.
We're not talking about earning your food here. That is definitely not what we're talking about.
Or worse, I feel those the David Goggins and the Cameron Hanes, those guys probably eat Thanksgiving alone or with each other, and they just do push-ups and the reality of it is that's not a part of our value system. We want to spend time with our family. We want to relax. We want to be engaged and not feel like we're, missing out on one of our workouts for that day. But at the same time, we can check both of those boxes by doing something, again, the long walk, with the family, while it's not warm up, strength conditioning, cool down like we would probably expect in a normal workout. We are doing something to further our health while spending time with our families and while being relaxed and engaged and not sitting on the couch doing none of it. So again, it's not that all or nothing thing.
100%. And I think it's important here, like you made that reference to, like the bro culture of like never missing a workout, or what was that bro culture? What are we talking about?
Genderize this thing.
Okay. You can cut that part out. But you made a reference to, that like hardcore, like grind culture essentially. And I think that comes down to like really thinking about why we do the things we do. Like we're getting movement in during the day, not because we want to punish our bodies or earn our food, but because it makes us feel better and it helps us show up better for the people we love. Like, right? Like if I start my day with exercise of some form, I'm just going to be a better human. And it's also like one thing that I can do to keep consistency, so that then on Friday morning, I'm not tempted to say, well, I'll just wait until Monday, right? It's like I already worked out yesterday. I could just like keep that needle moving. And by workout, we're essentially saying like, I just moved my body for 30 minutes, whatever that looks like for you.
Yep. So let's talk about like tactical. How does this look specifically for the next 2 months? And then let's pick into the specific holidays and events and like how you can strategize around that.
I think having some sort of like, I talk a lot about like a floor goal and a ceiling goal, right? Of like, so let's talk about it with workouts. You might like normally work out 4 or 5 days a week, right? Now you're looking at your calendar and you're thinking, okay, in the gym, it might not be 4. It might have to be a little bit less with like all the social engagements going on. And so what I generally like will encourage someone to do is set a floor goal and a ceiling goal. So that would be, instead of saying, well, I'm going to work out 6 days a week, right? And then all of a sudden you work out 4 and you're like, oh, I missed the goal. So then we tend to get into this thought of, well, I already missed, so I might miss more, right? Again, that all or nothing thinking. So instead you could say something like, my bare minimum is 3 workouts a week from now until January. If I can get 5, that's awesome. If I get 3, it's still a win. And now you have a little bit of a window so that if life unexpectedly something comes up or you end up having to travel or whatever it looks like, you still have some room to meet your goal without feeling like you failed.
Yeah, I think on top of that, you can set the goal of 5 days of intentional movement. And again, the loose defined intentional movement, I think there's a lot to be said for making the decision more. I think that's even more important than the actual physiological benefits of the exercise. Like saying, okay, I'm going to move 5 days a week. And if that means I have to go and walk the dog at PM when it's dark now, that's still the decision. That means you're making the right choice for yourself. And it is very easy to accomplish, in my opinion.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. And it allows you to ask the question because, again, with all or nothing thinking and like taking that time off, one of the things that you'll hear from like a fixed mindset perspective is, I can't, right? Like that's the first thing you'll say is I can't. And instead, when you have that goal, you can ask, how can I, right? And so then you can open up the door for some opportunities that might look a little different outside of your normal routine, but still help you check that box.
Okay, so tactically, people need to move 5 days a week for the next 9 weeks, and that is up to them. In other words, walk. If you get a workout, great. That obviously checks that box. But if it's just a walk or a stationary bike or whatever, 30 minutes of intentional, like where you make a decision to move your body, will be a massive step forward over the next 9 weeks rather than huge strides backwards.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about nutrition then. What is that? What's a good goal for the next 9 weeks, or not necessarily goal? What are some good tactical things that they can do for the next 9 weeks to not slide all the way back into oblivion?
I think keeping especially the meals of like breakfast and lunch as close to how you normally eat as possible. So starting the day with a big douse of protein, right? So for women, that's 30 to 40 grams of protein first thing in the morning, which is like a couple palmfuls of like lean protein. For men, what would you recommend starting the day with protein wise?
I have 4 eggs every day.
Yeah.
That's what I'd recommend. It's super easy. Takes 5 seconds to scramble, throw some salt in there, and you're good to go. So as far as like a macro, I'm actually not even positive of what that is, but it's super easy. It's very meal planny, like where it's already stocked in the fridge. You don't have to do any prep. You throw them in the pan and good to go. So 4 eggs, some spinach or greens, I think is a great way to start. to get you off on the right foot.
Yeah. And why we do that, like, because a lot of people say like eat protein, but like, why is that important? From like a blood sugar perspective, which like we want to avoid having these huge high peaks and dips, right? Because that sends us on the sugar roller coaster. And in a time where we're going to be having more sugar, or we're going to be seeing more sugar and having more of that with like, there's more cookies around, there's more chocolate, like all those things, setting yourself up for success by having a high protein breakfast and a high protein lunch helps you be able to have like one cookie and then move on. Right? Whereas if you start your day with something sweet, not a lot of protein, more sugar, you're going to start on that roller coaster from the very beginning of the day. And it's going to be a lot harder to make a mindful choice or regulate the treats that you are having later in the day.
Yeah. And to go even a little bit further in the weeds on this, protein is going to go towards maintaining or building muscle mass and not be stored for energy. So your body doesn't like to burn protein for fuel, and so we'll typically use that to either maintain or build muscle mass, which the importance of that being the more muscle that you have, the more your body is going to burn calories to maintain that muscle mass. So like this is, again, we're getting a little bit in the weeds, but having a high muscle mass means that you can consume more calories throughout the day because it just takes more energy to keep that structure alive. And again, the point being that if you have that, going back to the savings account idea, is that the more muscle mass you have, that's a passively earned interest on your body composition and so protein will go to structure and not be burned as fuel.
And it was like putting your seatbelt on in terms of helping you regulate sugar cravings and make more mindful choices.
Okay, so then the takeaway from that is people can focus on protein first. So trying to stay on your normal routine as best as you possibly can. But when that is not the case, if you are at an event or you are at Thanksgiving or you are whatever, focusing on protein making up the majority of your plate is still very doable. Like that's still, again, mostly if you make your Thanksgiving dinner plate based off of mostly turkey
and vegetables.
Yeah. But you're going to be in a good spot, and that the rest of that is just going to be, well, icing on the cake, for lack of a better metaphor.
I mean, this is like the simplest of mindful eating practices, but eating your protein and your veggies first on your plate means that you are going to be able to you're going to be more full when you get to that carbohydrate portion. And if you're listening to your hunger and fullness cues, then that means you're going to be able to regulate how much you're eating a lot easier, right? If you're starting with your potatoes, like they have a ton of butter in them, they taste delicious. Like it's hard to regulate that if you haven't first had your protein and veggies.
Yeah. And I think, again, on the deposit side of things, like eating protein is a deposit. Like that's a good step towards your health and well-being. And so just like exercise, if you get your exercise in, the rest of the day is, it's you've got to win. Protein's a win. And so you can do that on Thanksgiving. You do that at events. You can do that wherever you want. So protein first. And then back to when the day's the day, or allot yourself whatever that time off of that is, and then go back to normal. So we, like I said before in the beginning, Thanksgiving is very commonly for us. We have Thanksgiving kind of treated as off. We do follow what we just said, protein first, like that's our thing. But drinks or desserts or whatever else, cheese, yeah, on Thanksgiving and the day after, because leftovers are delicious, we typically will leave those days to be what they are and make no judgments on what we're doing for ourselves. We don't feel shame. We don't feel bad. And then, but once those days are over, that Saturday, we're back to normal. And it's not, I better eat the rest of this pie because somebody went to all this effort to make it. That goes by the wayside, and we're back to normal food. And
we're pretty mindful about what we choose to bring back in the house, right? We actually don't host Thanksgiving at our house. We go somewhere else for it. So if someone offers me the pie to bring home on Friday afternoon, I generally say no, because I know that having that in my environment past the point that I've already decided, like, okay, on Saturday we're getting right back on, that's going to just be really tempting and a temptation that like I don't need to put in my environment, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like to sum this all up, because I think that wraps up pretty darn well. Unless you have anything else to add.
No, I mean, I think it's like comes down to three things, right? Like one, your mindset should be during the holidays, I actually do have a lot of control and there can be a balance between enjoying the things that I love and voting for my health when like most of the time, right? And so like getting, I think in the holidays, that 80-20 rule of like 80% of the time I'm doing the things that make me feel really good and putting deposits in my bank account, and 20% of the time during the holidays I'm probably going to make a withdrawal. And like if you stick to that, you're going to end up on January 1st feeling amazing. Like you're going to feel great.
Yeah, I mean, you'll still want to like start fresh and have that opportunity, which we'll talk about at a later date. I mean, that's normal. Like we, as much as we do adhere to pretty good practices, like by January, it will be very rewarding for both of us mentally to get back in a more normal routine and not have things that are going to get in the way. So again, it's not that we're saying that we stick to everything perfectly, but in that January is not an opportunity to get back in a routine, because that is how it looks. But just having the right mindsets and strategies for these next 9 weeks is important. And those being, if you can focus on these three things, which we just talked about, of moving intentionally 5 days a week for 30 minutes, if you can focus on protein first, and if you can focus on making the day and cutting it off after that, you're going to have a phenomenal holiday season for your fitness and long-term health.
I think that's, yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Sounds great. Well, hope you guys have a great holiday season. We'll see you every week with some awesome, informative, and helpful podcasts. And hopefully you enjoyed this smooth sounds of our voices in
I
these
feel like we need like jazz music in the background.
kick microphones.
All right, guys.
Toodles.